Brooklyn bloodlines, Mikey the Hammer, Palermo. Every family's got its ghost, its monster, its guardian angel. For the Palermos, that was Mikey, the Hammer, Frankie's brother, Bambi and Nick's uncle, the man you called when talking stopped working. Back in the 80s, Mikey was a name that could freeze a room. He wasn't the boss, he wasn't the earner, he was the hand of the family, the Hammer. If Frankie said someone had to go, Mikey made it happen. No questions, no hesitation. One swing, one shot, one broken jaw. Permanent solutions. The streets learned quick. When the hammer dropped, the problem stayed buried. Then came the night Frankie got clipped outside that candy store. The Palermo name was left hanging in the wind, and Mikey, he vanished. Some said retired, others said hiding. Truth was, he never left. He just waited, watching from the shadows while his niece and nephew grew into the fire. Brooklyn, early 90s, a young Bambi, barely a teenager, standing in the rain after a fight with a neighbor kid. Nick's nose is bleeding, his fists raw. Mikey steps out to the dark, crouches low and wipes the blood from Nick's face with a hand like sandpaper. He don't smile. He just says, "You protect your own, even if it breaks you." Then he puts a hand on Bambi's shoulder, squeezes hard enough to hurt, and adds, "Don't ever let nobody write the end of your story for you. Palermos swing back." Those words stuck. They became the creed. Now, Brooklyn's heating again. Zintelli's back, Rizzo's making noise, the bureau's circling. And Bambi, she ain't alone. When she walks into a room, Mikey walks in behind her. The years put gray in his hair, but his fists still steel. The old hammer don't rust. Mikey Palermo ain't back for money. He ain't back for glory. He's back for family, for Frankie's memory, for the promise that the Palermo name won't die easy. The hammer's swinging again, and Brooklyn's gonna feel it. Brooklyn Bloodlines, Season 2, coming soon.
Muggs, what the fuck you doing in there, you prick?
Bambi's Twisted Tales, Hamilton. He arrived on the Manhattan docks with one trunk, a second-hand coat, and a fistful of letters that said he was a genius worth betting on. The wind pushed the smell of tar and brine through his hair. Gulls screamed like nosy old ladies. Hamilton stood there a minute, letting the noise soak in, and thought, "This city owes me everything, it just don't know it yet." He walked. That was his first lesson. Keep moving. Men who loiter ended up swept into the gutters with the rain. He ducked inside a tavern on Stone Street, where the candles burned low and the ale tasted like regret. "You the island kid?" the barkeep asked, polishing a chipped mug. "The one they wrote about in the Gazette?" Hamilton smiled, knife thin. "Depends who's looking for him." "People with coin," the barkeep said, "and people with knives." "Good," Hamilton said. "I speak both languages." He found a room upstairs over a printer's shop, a narrow bed and a crooked window, looking out at a sky of chimney smoke. Nights, the presses hammered a rhythm under his floorboards. He liked the sound, like war drums or his own heartbeat, reminding him that words, pounded hard enough, could become weapons. He wrote for bread. Essays, speeches, letters for merchants who wanted to sound smarter than they were. He charged cheap at first, then he charged fair, then he charged what they'd bleed. One night a merchant leaned across the table and said, "Son, you ain't got 2 pennies to rub. How's a boy like you write like a man with a vault behind him? Hamilton tapped his forehead. Because the vault's up here, and it never closes. He met Washington in a room that smelled like damp wool and patience. Maps were spread across a table, the ink rivers of 2 continents flowing into war. The general stood tall, a weathered statue with eyes that took in everything and returned nothing. Colonel Hamilton, Washington said, though the title was more promissory note than rank. Sir, Hamilton answered, steady. Washington gestured at the chaos of parchment. Men with muskets I got, men with numbers, fewer. Men who can make debt behave, rare as spring in February. Hamilton stepped forward, palmed the quill, and began. He sorted columns, squared accounts, carved a nation's credit out of smoke and IOUs. He wrote through noon, through dusk, through candles guttering at 2 in the morning. Washington watched the whole time, silent as a church. When Hamilton finally set down the quill, Washington nodded once. "You don't stop," he said. "Stopping is a polite way of dying," Hamilton said. Washington almost smiled. "Then don't die. We got work." In the months that followed, Hamilton became the hand that turned the hinge. He drafted orders that moved regiments like chess pieces. He bartered with the kind of men who'd sell you the rope to hang yourself and then charge rent on the tree. He made debt into a chain and wrapped it around 13 restless colonies until they pulled together by necessity, if not love. At night, when the camp stank of wet leather and burned powder, Washington would step out under the stars and ask, "You believe this can hold?" "It has to," Hamilton said. "Belief comes later." Power draws flies and peacocks. Thomas Jefferson arrived in town looking like a painting that cost too much. Lace, perfume, that plantation drawl you could pour on pancakes. "Mr. Hamilton," Jefferson said, tipping just enough respect to pass, "you would make a kingdom out of a republic." "And you would make a farm out of a nation," Hamilton replied. "Some of us prefer cities to fields." Jefferson's smile didn't touch his eyes. "Cities grow weeds." "Better weeds than chains," Hamilton snapped, already sharpening pamphlet paragraphs in his head. They went at it in chambers with ceilings too high for honest talk. Jefferson spoke about virtue and vines. Hamilton spoke about ships and banks. The gallery leaned forward like a bookie at a horse track. Every sentence was a wager. Every pause, a loaded die. After one particularly bloody debate, Hamilton found himself in a corridor with John Adams, who squinted at him like he was a new kind of firearm.
"You're making enemies," Adams grunted. "I'm making architecture," Hamilton said. "Enemies are part of the scaffolding." "And when they yank the planks out from under you?" Adams asked. "Then I learned to fly," Hamilton said, and walked away, already drafting his next volley. Aaron Burr shook his hand like a tailor measuring a sleeve. Neat coat, neat hair, neat smile. You wouldn't catch the man with a wrinkle unless he ironed it himself. "Alexander," Burr said, smooth as varnish, "we are, what do they call it, professionally adjacent." "Neighbours with a fence," Hamilton said. "We could share the yard," Burr offered. "Compromise is underrated." Hamilton laughed. "Compromise is where good ideas go to drown." Burr's smile thinned. "Or where rash men go to dry out." They dined together twice, maybe 3 times. Burr listened more than he spoke. He filed people, neat as receipts. Hamilton took up space and talked like a bonfire. Burr was a hearth, contained heat, careful flame. He didn't argue, he calculated. After dinner one evening, Burr tugged on a glove and said, "You're building a future no one voted for." "I'm building the only one that keeps the lights on," Hamilton said. "Lights can blind," Burr replied. "Dark lets a man think." Hamilton waved it off. Dark breeds rats. Then don't be a rat, Burr said, and stepped into the night like a shadow going home. Whispers are knives wrapped in kisses. They came for him the way fog comes for a field. Quiet, total. A contractor's wife. Letters. Midnight. The kind of talk that stains even if it ain't true. Friends told him to shut up. Let it pass, they said. Let it die of boredom. But Hamilton's pride had its own heartbeat. He sat at his desk under a candle that spat like a drunk and wrote the confession that would be his ruin. He wrote like a man pulling a bullet with his teeth and calling it medicine. He put his sins on paper because the one thing he would not, could not wear was the stink of financial corruption. He'd rather be a traitor to his wife than a traitor to his ledgers. It was monstrous and honest, and exactly who he was. When the pamphlet hit the streets, New York inhaled sharply and didn't exhale for a week. Women glared over fans, men whispered in churches. Jefferson laughed into his sleeve. Burr didn't laugh. He folded the pamphlet into his coat and said nothing, which was worse. Eliza watched him from the doorway of their parlour, her eyes a quiet, devastating country he'd never again be allowed to conquer. "You could have burned it," she said. "I can't burn truth," he answered. "You burned me," she said, and walked away. The bank rose out of lower Manhattan like a counting house cathedral.
Hamilton loved it the way a mason loves his first wall. He talked of bonds, duties, assumptions, the poetry of numbers sung in an iron key. Out on the wharves, longshoremen spit and said he was turning free men into book entries. Upstate, farmers muttered about whiskey and taxes. In parlors, old money insisted he was a climber with shiny shoes. He was all of that and none of it. He was a man trying to keep a country from falling apart by tying every limb to every other limb and hoping no one cut the rope. Washington asked him one night, "Tell me the truth. Have you made us safe?" "I've made us accountable," Hamilton said. "Safety's a rumor we sell ourselves." Washington grunted. "Rumor's a poor blanket in winter." "Then we build a furnace," Hamilton said, "and keep feeding it." Burr ran for office like a man asking to borrow your best suit and promising to return it clean. Hamilton blocked him where he could, fought him where he couldn't. He said Burr believed in nothing but his own reflection. Burr didn't argue. He never argued. He waited. Invitations dried. Doors learned new locks. Hamilton discovered what happens when you're the sharpest knife in a drawer full of fingers. People stop reaching. One humid night, the city swollen with heat, Burr appeared outside a tavern on Pearl Street, where Hamilton had been drinking ink and fire. "Alexander," Burr said softly, "there's a debt between us." "There's an ocean of them," Hamilton said. "You chose to swim in it." "I chose to learn the tides," Burr replied. "Dawn, Jersey, pistols." His smile was all etiquette, no mercy. "Let's pretend to be gentlemen." Hamilton's laugh was a brittle window. "Gentlemen are cowards with manners." Burr tipped his hat. "So meet me anyway." History says they went to Weehawken at dawn. That's the bedtime story whispered to make killers look like courtiers. What happened in the world we know, the one with mud and hunger and men, took place behind a warehouse at the waterfront, where fog hung low enough to touch, and rats owned the real estate. Hamilton arrived early, not out of fear, but because he always arrived early. Time was a ledger, and he refused to owe it. He stood with his back to a stack of crates, breathing rope and brine, fingers stained ink blue that no soap could wash. Burr came without fanfare, coat buttoned, hair neat, eyes tired. "You could apologize," he said. "For what?" Hamilton asked. "For treating a man like empty space," Burr said. Space fills, Alex, usually with lead. Then fill it, Hamilton said, and there was that pride, bright as a match, foolish as a child. Burr didn't debate. He did what patient men do when the long arithmetic ends. He drew, leveled, and fired. Once, then once again, the sound swallowed by fog and wood. The first shot took breath. The second took history's permission. Hamilton folded slowly, like a letter creased along an old grief. He looked surprised, not at death, but at the quiet of it. He put a hand to the wound, saw the red, and gave a small, almost embarrassed smile, as if he'd spilled wine on a rented coat. Burr stepped closer, not gloating, not grieving. A clerk closing a book. "You built a country," he said, voice low, "but you wouldn't leave room for anyone else to live in it." Hamilton tried to answer. Maybe he said Eliza. Maybe he said bank. Maybe he said nothing at all, because the fog took the words and folded them someplace only the river knows. Burr buttoned his coat and walked away. He didn't run. Running was for men who could still be forgiven. They carried Hamilton home on a door borrowed from a neighbor who'd been using it as a table. Eliza sat with him till the sun discovered the city again and decided to condemn it for all the things it had allowed. Washington stood at the foot of the bed, hat in hand, old in a way battlefield winters couldn't make him. He was a furnace, he said. Eliza didn't look up. "Furnaces burn everything," she whispered, "even what they're supposed to warm." The city argued while they mourned. Some said saint, some said sinner. Most said both. Because men who build anything worth keeping always step on toes while the cement dries. Traders worried over bonds. Printers sold out of broadsheets. Jefferson penned a letter so polite it squeaked. Burr offered silence, which was not forgiveness, but something colder. At the river, boys skipped stones and shouted his name just to hear it bounce. Names do that. They skip, then they sink. Moral. Brains will buy you leverage. Hustle will crack open doors nailed shut. A pen can be sharper than a saber if the hand holding it ain't afraid to bleed. But pride? Pride is a blindfold you tie yourself. It makes you walk into alleys that ain't on any map and dare the dark to aim true. Hamilton got remembered. That was the victory he loved best. But remembrance don't stop bullets, and legacy don't sit shiver. He built a furnace and stood too close. Burr didn't win. He survived. Sometimes survival is the only prize this world pays out in cash. It ain't noble. It ain't pretty. It is what it is. So there you got it, history stripped of lace, told in the language of docks and ledgers. If this hit you in the ribs the way it's supposed to, do the right thing. Subscribe to Bambi Palermo, step into the pizzaverse, and bring a friend who likes their stories with gunpowder on the breath and ink on the knuckles. We don't throw away our shot, cupcakes. We take it. Thanks for watching.